If you've been trying to get an RTX 5090 or a 5080 on launch day, and you've been met with, as soon as you refresh the browser, out of stock, then don't worry. You are among the majority of people who try to get one of these cards on day one, and you had zero luck at all. And in fact, today we're going to talk about the experience of the day one launch here and the subsequent days in Australia for me personally and what I've noticed, as well as looking at this one particular seller where they've made in total $77,000 of sales off 11 graphics cards, just 11 RTX 5090s. And in fact, I think it's 6 graphics cards to a box. And so they must have got 2 boxes minus 1 where that one GPU went somewhere else. The seller is probably waiting to maybe even put it up for more money. But essentially, I calculated the profit that this seller made, even if they were paying roughly close to MSRP for these cards, they were going to make around $22,000 profit, or they have made that already, off these cards after they pay even eBay fees, taxes, and shipping costs. So that's an absolute lucrative amount of money to make off 11 graphics cards. And so this is a direct message to NVIDIA, and that is you're going to be demoralizing your customer base if you allow this behavior to continue, at least in the way that you're not really doing much about it, in the fact that the RTX 5080 and 5090 launch this time was much worse than previous 80 and 90 series card launches. For instance, on day one for the 4090, if you were up at midnight, where I'm at personally, and you were refreshing the browser, you at least saw some of the models in stock. In other words, if you were really quick, you could have got one of these cards on day one. And it was actually the same for the RTX 3000 series launch. I was really keen to get an RTX 3080 on launch day, and I stayed up until midnight, and I was able to get one. This time around, when everyone was refreshing their browsers in Australia, it was just out of stock the second after midnight, and it just remained that way for the majority of retailers. In fact, I spoke to a few people behind the scenes, and apparently there wasn't even 100 units of RTX 5090s shipped to Australia. That's how poor the stock levels were here. Though when it came to RTX 5080s, I heard these were much more in stock. In fact, there was over 1,000 units shipped to Australia, which is still pretty bad for a day one launch, but there were ways you could have got one of these cards. In fact, I did get one myself at around MSRP, and it's coming in the mail sometime soon. But we'll talk about this whole launch, why it's one of the worst GPU launches in history, right after today's video sponsor. Do you need to get Windows 10 or Windows 11 activated and don't want to spend $200 or some other exorbitant price? Well, if so, today's video sponsor VIP SCD Keys has you covered. For as little as $15 using the coupon code BFTYC, you can get Windows 10 activated, and for a little bit more you can get Windows 11 activated too. Links in description below to find out more. Welcome back to Tech Yes City. Now with the RTX 5000 series launch, I'm actually really upset with the availability of this launch as opposed to the actual performance numbers. I thought the RTX 5080 had a lot of features that made it a pretty decent value add over the predecessor card. And then the 5090 was there for people who just had unlimited money and didn't really care. And in hindsight, I guess that unlimited money factor really reaches out and shows that people are just going to pay absolutely anything for these cards on day one. They're willing to get scalped in Australia, 7,000 Australian dollars. In fact, there was someone who listed an ASUS card for even more, $7,500, and they sold that almost instantly on the day one launch of this card. And so you may be wondering now, what is the solution to this? And the most obvious answer is NVIDIA should wait until they have more stock before they create this hysteria in terms of trying to get a card. In fact, I heard reports in Japan where one of my friends was there on the launch day. Some of the stores were just closed down, and they just put up a notice saying they're going to have absolutely no RTX 5000 series cards available. Don't even bother. And in fact, there was other stores that had a lottery system where they even closed down the lottery system because it was just overloaded with demand. In other words, people couldn't even get in with a chance to have a chance of winning the option to buy a graphics card at MSRP. That's how ridiculous this launch ended up becoming in the end, especially in places like Japan. And then there was also another report of reckless behavior happening around a kindergarten. And to the person out there doing that kind of reckless behavior, it's okay. Your RTX 4090 is still going to game at 180 FPS at 4K over the 240 FPS that the 5090 is going to give you. You don't have to worry. It's going to come back in stock sooner or later. So we can see that there was definitely not enough stock for the 5090 on day one, and this further compounded the problem because there was then people knowing that information in the retail channels firsthand, knowing how low the stock was going to be, and then taking that stock out before it even hit the shelves. And I saw this on day one in Australia because there was just not even an in-stock message on any of the cards. A lot of them were just taken out of the supply and put into either gaming PCs at exorbitant prices, or they were just sold off on eBay on the side market through people with names that aren't going to be linked back to the retail stores who got the stock in the first place. So that in turn has essentially compounded the problem in that there's less 5090s available than there should be to people who actually want to purchase them and play games on them. And so from this launch, the only people who have really won, and I mean won big, is the scalpers, at least with the RTX 5090s. And so breaking down some of these figures for these scalpers, that's insane amount of money. That is one of the most lucrative GPU launches I've seen, even versus the 3000 series on that crypto mining boom. And this is just insane in terms of profit per card. The 5090 is definitely delivering the scalpers a massive payday. And that's all got to do with essentially mass demand and not enough supply. So there's the easy fix for NVIDIA to straight away just hold back the launch until they have more stock in the 5090s. In fact, they probably should have just launched the 5080 first. So the scalping that surrounded this launch is just insane. I've never seen levels like this before on a day one launch for a gaming graphics card. But then there's also things that are coming out that I've personally noticed over the last few days that are just really disgusting, especially from the board partners themselves. For instance, in Australia, I'm seeing the ASUS Tuf model. They've got two models for sale with the 5090. They've got the one that's coming in at MSRP in Australia here, which is $4,040 roughly. And then they've got an OC model, the exact same model of card, just with an OC label slapped on, and they're charging roughly 1,000 Australian dollars more for that. Now, the irony here is when I look at this closer, there is literally no mention of the clock speeds that they're giving you for this extra money. And also, when we look at the memory speeds, they're identical. So in other words, you want to get an MSRP card and save yourself $1,000 and just manually clock in and overclock yourself versus going out and getting scalped by ASUS themselves for $1,000. But you know the saddest thing about all this is that there's still going to be people defending ASUS over this. They'll be like, yeah, Brian, that $1,000, man, that they really have to get that money because they've got to test the overclocks. That's why they're charging the $1,000. And so for me personally, I'm sitting here thinking, man, on one side, I hate the scalping aspect, but on the other side, if people are that stupid that they're going to defend a brand over this kind of blatant ripping off and price gouging, then they deserve to get ripped off. Now, let me know what you guys think in the comments section, because this next example is just another little slide tactic that's going on with this launch too, and that is sell your old PC parts that no one wants and bundle it with an RTX 5080 or 5090 for an exorbitantly high price just because all the GPUs themselves are out of stock individually. And so we've got a particular retailer here in Australia that wants to sell you a Core Ultra 7, and if you want to get the Ryzen option, well, you can pay a lot more for that too. And that, of course, is in stock, ready to purchase. Though we've saved the juiciest till last, because this is where people are going to come in and say it's all NVIDIA's fault. NVIDIA is the only one to blame here. They've made it so that the margins for the partners are so little, especially at the MSRP prices, they're not going to be able to make money. So they can't sell at these MSRP prices, Brian. They've got to jack the ASUS Tuf OC to $5,000 for the 5090 over the $4,000 model. And here's where there's actually a seller in Australia, and I'm going to give them a big shout out because they were one of the few people this launch to actually price things at honest levels. They had the RTX 5080 Gaming Pro editions in stock for MSRP. And when I woke up the morning after midnight, I found this on a forum called Aussie Bargain. And they had these in stock still, the cards individually for MSRP in Australia. And they also didn't even have to do this because they're a system integrator. They practically only sell gaming PCs, but because they got a heap of 5080s in, they decided to say, hey, we'll take care of the people who want to buy one of these cards individually. So big kudos to TechFast in Australia for doing this. But what I found really cool from this company, and this is what I ordered personally, was that they had a whole 9800X3D system with 32 gig of RAM, gold rated power supply, everything, pre-built, shipped to your door for around 3,300 Australian dollars. And so if we convert this to USD, this makes it around 2,000 USD, which is actually insane for a flagship gaming PC in 2025, all things considered. Though the best thing about TechFast is what they've shown, at least me personally in Australia here, is that a company can order the cards in from Pallet, and Pallet makes an honest profit, and then they can sell them at MSRP and make an honest profit too. So that sort of disproves the whole ASUS, the partners, are not making enough money at MSRP with the prices. Because, I mean, $1,000 uplift on a 5090 for just slapping OC after the label is definitely price gouging. When another company like TechFast, via Pallet, can sell models at MSRP comfortably. And then if we looked at their more flagship 5080 Game Rock, that's got all the extra bells and whistles like the RGB on top, the bigger card, the OC, the beefed up VRM, and they're doing that for a little bit more over MSRP in Australian dollars. So in USD terms, it'd be about 100 USD. So the fact that they can do that, and everyone in the pipeline still making a profit, means that a lot of these arguments saying that they need to jack up the price by 300 or 400 USD per model is absolute bogus. So at least in Australia, big thanks to TechFast for showing that you can do an honest GPU launch without scalping everyone. And in the process, debunking this whole argument of the partners need to jack up the prices 300 or 400 USD just to get by. Anyhow, guys, with all that aside, if you want to get a 5080 or a 5090, I have been asking around, and it looks like there will be more 5080s coming back into stock at the end of this month. In terms of the 5090s, however, that's up in the air. I'm hearing a lot of different reports where it could be anywhere up to 3 months before there's actually a healthy supply of 5090s in stock for people to buy. So that just means that with that information, I think you're going to see a lot more scalping on the 5090 side of things. I'm personally going to be thinking of the 5080 as the flagship and encouraging people not to spend a penny more over that MSRP. Or if they want the fancy models, really don't pay any more than 100 USD for it. Though as the weeks go by, I'll keep you guys updated for sure, as this has just been a complete shit show of the GPU launch, especially the 5090 in particular. And if anything, it's not going to look that good for the 5070 or the 5070 Ti if this is anything to go by. But my hopes and dreams have definitely dropped off a cliff after seeing this launch. And the saddest thing was with the Founders card in Australia, they didn't even bother shipping any models of Founders to Australia this time around. So people were asking me behind the scenes, are we going to get a Founders card in Australia? And there wasn't even the lottery this time around. And if anything, looking at Japan, they may have just invented a new meta for getting a GPU on launch day, and that is the double lottery system. That is, you first enter for a chance to then enter in for another chance to get a GPU. All right, guys, I'm done for the day. I'm going to catch you in another tech video very soon. If you've stayed this far and you enjoy the Techiest content, then hit that like button. Also, let us know in the comment section below what you thought about today's video and how was the stock levels in your country on launch day. Were you trying to get one of these cards? Were you not trying to get one of these cards? Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always. And with that aside, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.